Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Library. Tonight, we are drifting into the magnificent realm of the Arctic, where ice meets sky in an endless dance of light and shadow. A place where the world grows quiet, where winters stretch into months of twilight, and where the land itself seems to breathe beneath blankets of ancient snow. The Arctic is not simply a region on a map. It is a frontier of wonder, a realm that has shaped cultures, tested explorers, and preserved secrets within its frozen heart for countless millennia. Out there, in the silent north, are landscapes of impossible beauty, creatures perfectly sculpted by time and cold, and phenomena that paint the darkness with ribbons of green and violet light. This is not just a journey through geography. It is a journey through stillness, through the hidden architecture of Earth's crown. The things we will discover are not only strange, but beautifully real. These faraway places might challenge what we think we know about survival, about beauty, or about what it means to call a place home. If you enjoy these quiet journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, just breathe. Let the night sink around you and allow your mind to settle. Let's begin. The word Arctic comes from the Greek word for bear. When ancient Greeks looked northward and noticed the constellation Ursa Major, the Great Bear, hanging in the northern sky, they called the region beneath it Arctos, the land of the bear. Later, the constellation Ursa Minor, the Little Bear, joined its companion in marking the northern heavens. These celestial bears became the navigational anchors for travelers and storytellers, guiding sailors across dark seas and inspiring myths about the frozen edges of the known world. Interestingly, the name has nothing to do with polar bears, those magnificent white giants that actually do roam the Arctic ice. The bears of the name are stars, not animals, patterns of light that humans have used to orient themselves for thousands of years. It is a poetic accident that both kinds of bears, celestial and earthly, now share the same frozen realm. The Arctic remains a place where sky and land seem to mirror one another, where the same forces of navigation, survival, and wonder apply to both the heavens above and the ice below. The Arctic Circle sits at approximately 66 degrees and 30 minutes north latitude. This invisible line wraps around the top of the planet like a crown, marking the southern boundary of a region defined not by politics or geology alone, but by light itself. Above this circle, there exists at least one day each year when the sun does not set at all, and one day when it does not rise. These are the phenomena known as the midnight sun and the polar night, twin expressions of the Earth's tilt as it journeys around the sun. At the very top of the world, at the North Pole, the sun rises once each year and sets once each year. There are 6 months of continuous daylight, followed by 6 months of continuous darkness. At latitudes just below the pole, but still north of the Arctic Circle, the number of days of perpetual light or dark decreases, creating gradations of twilight, dusk, and dawn that stretch across weeks. This relationship between the Earth and the Sun transforms the Arctic into a place where time feels different, where a single day can last for months and a single night can swallow entire seasons. The Arctic Ocean is the smallest and shallowest of the world's oceans. Covering approximately 14 million square kilometers, it is about 1/10 the size of the Pacific Ocean. Yet, despite its modest dimensions, it plays an outsized role in regulating the planet's climate and supporting ecosystems found nowhere else on Earth. The Arctic Ocean is mostly covered by sea ice, thick plates of frozen seawater that expand and contract with the seasons. In winter, ice coverage can reach 14 million square kilometers, while in summer it shrinks to around 6.5 million. This ice is not static. It moves, cracks, and reforms in response to winds, currents, and temperature, creating a dynamic landscape of ridges, leads, and pressure points. The ocean beneath this ice is relatively shallow compared to other oceans, with an average depth of around 1,000 meters, though some regions plunge to over 4,000 meters. Within its cold, dark waters live specialized creatures adapted to extreme conditions, from microscopic diatoms that drift through the brine to massive bowhead whales that can break through ice nearly 2 feet thick with their enormous heads. The ice of the Arctic contains around 10% of the world's fresh water. This vast frozen reservoir, locked within glaciers, ice caps, and sea ice, reflects sunlight back into space, helping to keep the region cool and playing a crucial role in stabilizing the global climate. The Greenland ice sheet alone, a colossal mass of ice spanning over 1.7 million square kilometers, is formed from snow and ice that has accumulated over hundreds of thousands of years. In some places, this ice is more than 3 kilometers thick, a towering archive of ancient snowfalls compressed into layers of blue and white. Glaciers and icebergs in the Arctic make up about 20% of Earth's supply of fresh water. When icebergs carve from glaciers, breaking off with thunderous cracks and splashing into the sea, they carry with them freshwater ice that has been frozen for millennia. These floating mountains of ice, 90% submerged beneath the surface, drift with ocean currents, slowly melting as they journey south into warmer waters. The fresh water they release influences ocean salinity, which in turn affects global ocean circulation patterns and the distribution of heat around the planet. In Svalbard, Norway, the sun never fully sets for 125 days. From mid-April to mid-August, the archipelago experiences what is known as the midnight sun, a natural phenomenon where daylight persists around the clock. The sun traces a lazy circle in the sky, dipping toward the horizon but never disappearing, painting the landscape in endless shades of gold and amber. Glaciers glow softly in the perpetual twilight, and wildlife remains active at all hours, unburdened by the usual rhythms of day and night. For humans, the midnight sun can be both exhilarating and disorienting, a surreal erasure of the boundary between waking and sleeping. Blackout curtains become essential for rest, yet many visitors find themselves energized by the constant light, hiking and exploring well into what would ordinarily be nighttime. The experience is one of temporal suspension, as if the Earth itself has paused its rotation to allow a single, golden day to stretch on forever. In winter, however, Svalbard undergoes an equally dramatic transformation. From mid-November to late January, the polar night descends, a period when the sun does not rise above the horizon at all. The world falls into a deep blue twilight, punctuated occasionally by the moon, the stars, and the shimmering curtains of the northern lights. The polar night is the opposite of the midnight sun. During this time, the sun remains below the horizon for weeks or even months, depending on how far north you are. In some parts of the Arctic, the polar night lasts for only a few days, a brief dip into extended darkness. In others, such as near the North Pole itself, it stretches for half the year. The darkness is not absolute. At the beginning and end of the polar night, there is often a period of civil twilight, when the sky glows faintly with indirect sunlight, casting the world in shades of indigo and violet. As the polar night deepens, however, this faint light fades, and true darkness settles in. The stars become impossibly bright, unobscured by light pollution or the glow of the sun. The Milky Way stretches across the sky like a river of light, and constellations that seem faint from lower latitudes blaze with startling clarity. For those who live in the Arctic, the polar night is a time of stillness and introspection, a season that demands adaptation and resilience. Communities gather indoors, candles and lanterns flicker in windows, and life takes on a quieter, more inward quality. Yet there is also beauty in the darkness, a profound intimacy with the night sky, and a closeness to the rhythms of nature that modern life often obscures. There is more than one North Pole. The geographic North Pole, also known as true north, is the northernmost point on Earth's surface, the fixed point around which the planet rotates. It lies in the middle of the Arctic Ocean, surrounded by shifting sea ice, and has no permanent landmass beneath it. Standing at the geographic North Pole, every direction is south. To the south of the geographic North Pole lies the magnetic North Pole, the point toward which all magnetic compasses point. This pole is not fixed. It moves constantly, drifting across the Arctic due to changes in the Earth's magnetic field, generated by the motion of molten iron in the planet's outer core. In recent decades, the magnetic North Pole has been moving at an accelerating pace, shifting from northern Canada towards Siberia at a rate of several tens of kilometers per year. Navigators and scientists must account for this movement, updating maps and instruments regularly to ensure accuracy. There is also the geomagnetic North Pole, a theoretical point calculated from the Earth's magnetic field as if it were a perfect dipole. This pole differs slightly from the magnetic North Pole and also moves over time. For explorers and adventurers, reaching the geographic North Pole has long been a symbol of ultimate achievement, a journey to the literal top of the world. The first confirmed expedition to reach it is a matter of historical debate, with American explorer Robert Peary often credited with arriving on April 6, 1909, though some dispute the accuracy of his navigation. The Arctic is warming twice as fast as anywhere else on Earth. This phenomenon, known as Arctic amplification, occurs because of feedback loops unique to the region. One of the most significant is the ice albedo feedback. Ice and snow are highly reflective, bouncing up to 90% of the sun's energy back into space. When ice melts, it reveals darker surfaces, such as open ocean or land, which absorb up to 90% of solar radiation. This absorbed heat warms the region further, causing more ice to melt, which leads to even more warming. The result is a cascading effect that accelerates temperature increases far beyond the global average. Since the early 1900s, Arctic temperatures have risen at a rate roughly double that of the rest of the planet, with some areas experiencing increases of 3 times the global average or more, depending on the season and location. This rapid warming has profound consequences. Sea ice extent is declining by more than 10% every decade. Glaciers are thinning and retreating. Permafrost, the permanently frozen ground that underlies much of the Arctic, is beginning to thaw, releasing stored carbon and methane into the atmosphere and further amplifying warming. The changes reshape weather patterns, affect ecosystems, and alter the lives of the people and animals who call the Arctic home. In 2018, the Arctic Ocean experienced its second worst sea ice decline on record. Parts of Greenland that had been covered by ice for millennia were exposed to open ocean for the first time in recorded history. The loss of sea ice has far-reaching effects that extend well beyond the Arctic itself. Sea ice plays a critical role in Earth's climate system by reflecting sunlight and insulating the relatively warmer ocean from the frigid atmosphere above. When it disappears, the dark ocean absorbs heat, disrupting the temperature balance that has existed for thousands of years. This disruption influences the jet stream, a high-altitude river of air that governs weather patterns across the northern hemisphere. As the temperature difference between the Arctic and lower latitudes diminishes, the jet stream can become more erratic, meandering in exaggerated loops that bring unusual weather to regions far from the poles. Cold snaps, heat waves, floods, and droughts in temperate zones can all be traced, at least in part, to changes happening in the Arctic. The ice also serves as essential habitat for countless species. Polar bears rely on sea ice to hunt seals, their primary food source. Walruses use ice floes as resting platforms between dives for clams and other shellfish. Seals give birth to their pups on the ice, sheltered from predators and the elements. As the ice shrinks, these animals are forced to adapt, often unsuccessfully, to rapidly changing conditions. Polar bears are the largest land predators in the world. Adult males can weigh between 700 and 1,500 pounds, with some individuals exceeding even that massive range. They can stand over 10 feet tall when on their hind legs, towering and formidable. Despite their size, polar bears are agile and surprisingly fast, capable of running at speeds up to 25 miles per hour across the ice. They are also exceptional swimmers, using their large front paws to paddle through frigid waters with ease. Polar bears have been observed swimming continuously for over 100 miles, a testament to their endurance and adaptation to a life spent partly at sea. Their thick layer of blubber, which can be over 4 inches thick, provides insulation against the cold and buoyancy in the water. Their fur, which appears white, is actually made up of hollow, translucent hairs that scatter and reflect light, giving the bears their iconic snowy appearance. Beneath the fur, their skin is black, helping to absorb and retain heat from the sun. Polar bears are hypercarnivores, with seals making up the vast majority of their diet. Ringed seals and bearded seals are their primary prey, hunted with patience and precision. A polar bear will often wait motionless beside a seal's breathing hole in the ice, sometimes for hours, until the seal surfaces. In a fraction of a second, the bear strikes, using its powerful jaws and claws to haul the seal onto the ice. They primarily consume the energy-rich blubber of the seal, which fuels their massive bodies and sustains them through long periods without food. The narwhal is known as the unicorn of the sea. Male narwhals grow a long, spiral tusk that protrudes from their upper lip, a modified tooth that can reach lengths of over 10 feet. This tusk is one of the most distinctive features in the animal kingdom, twisting in a helical pattern that has inspired myths and legends for centuries. Traders sometimes sold narwhal tusks as unicorn horns, claiming they possessed magical properties. In reality, the tusk is a sensory organ, packed with millions of nerve endings that allow the narwhal to detect changes in water temperature, pressure, and even chemical composition. Scientists believe the tusk may also play a role in communication, mating displays, or stunning prey, though much about its exact function remains a mystery. Narwhals live in the cold waters of the Arctic, primarily around Greenland, Canada, and Russia. They travel in groups called pods, often numbering in the dozens or even hundreds during migration. Unlike many whales, narwhals have no dorsal fin, an adaptation that allows them to navigate more easily beneath thick sea ice. They are deep divers, capable of descending to depths of over 5,000 feet in search of fish, squid, and shrimp. A narwhal dive can last up to 25 minutes, during which the animal slows its heart rate to conserve oxygen. In the winter, narwhals inhabit some of the most ice-covered waters on Earth, relying on cracks and openings in the ice to breathe. The Arctic fox is one of the most adaptable animals in the region. Smaller than a domestic cat, weighing only 6 to 10 pounds, the Arctic fox has evolved to survive in some of the harshest conditions on the planet. Its thick, multi-layered fur is the warmest of any mammal, providing insulation even when temperatures plunge to -70 degrees Fahrenheit. In winter, the fox's coat turns pure white, blending seamlessly with the snow and ice. In summer, the fur molts to a thinner coat of brown or grey, helping the fox blend into the rocky tundra landscape. This seasonal camouflage is critical for both hunting and avoiding predators. Arctic foxes are opportunistic feeders, eating whatever is available. In summer, they hunt lemmings, voles, birds, and eggs, sometimes caching food in the permafrost to eat later when prey is scarce. In winter, they often follow polar bears, scavenging scraps from seal kills. Their remarkable hearing allows them to locate prey moving beneath the snow, and they are known for a hunting technique called mousing, where they leap high into the air and plunge head first into a snowdrift to catch rodents hidden below. Arctic foxes have also been observed eating berries, seaweed, and even fish washed ashore. They are among the few land mammals capable of surviving the Arctic winter on the sea ice itself, far from land, living off the remnants of polar bear meals and whatever else they can find in the frozen wilderness. Walruses are enormous marine mammals, weighing up to 3,700 pounds. Both males and females possess long tusks, actually elongated canine teeth, that can grow up to 3 feet in length. These tusks serve multiple purposes. Walruses use them to haul themselves out of the water onto ice floes, giving rise to their scientific family name, Odobenidae, which means tooth walkers. The tusks are also used to create and maintain breathing holes in the ice, and as weapons during fights over mates or territory. Male walruses, in particular, engage in aggressive displays and physical combat during mating season, their tusks clashing in battles that can leave scars. Beneath their wrinkled, thick skin, walruses have a layer of blubber up to 6 inches thick, insulating them from the icy waters of the Arctic Ocean. Their skin can appear pink or even white, not because of pigmentation, but due to changes in blood flow. When a walrus is warm, blood vessels near the skin dilate, giving it a rosy hue. When cold, the blood retreats inward, leaving the skin pale. Walruses feed primarily on the ocean floor, diving to depths of up to 260 feet in search of clams, mussels, and other invertebrates. They use their highly sensitive whiskers, called vibrissae, to feel along the seafloor in the dark, murky water. Once a walrus locates prey, it uses powerful suction created by its mouth to extract the soft flesh from shells, leaving the empty shells behind. A single walrus can consume thousands of clams in a day, and large groups of walruses can significantly alter the composition of the seafloor ecosystem. Ringed seals are the most common seal species in the Arctic. They are also among the smallest seals, typically growing to about 5 feet in length and weighing between 100 and 150 pounds. Ringed seals are named for the distinctive light-colored rings that mark their dark grey or brown coats. These seals are uniquely adapted to life in the ice, capable of using their strong claws to carve breathing holes through ice that can be over 6 feet thick. They maintain multiple breathing holes throughout the winter, visiting each one regularly to keep it open. Beneath the ice, they create small lairs where they rest, and in spring, give birth to pups. These layers are hollowed out of snowdrifts above the breathing hole, providing insulation and protection from predators. Ringed seal pups are born with a soft, white coat called lanugo, which provides camouflage against the snow. Ringed seals feed on a variety of small prey, including 72 species of fish and invertebrates such as shrimp and krill. They are excellent divers, capable of reaching depths of 150 feet and staying underwater for up to 45 minutes. Despite their adaptations, ringed seals are a primary food source for polar bears, who hunt them with remarkable patience and skill. The relationship between ringed seals and polar bears is one of the defining dynamics of the Arctic ecosystem, a delicate balance of predator and prey that has existed for millennia. Beluga whales are known for their white color and wide range of vocal sounds. Adult belugas are entirely white, a coloration that helps them blend into the icy Arctic environment. Calves, however, are born dark gray or brown and gradually lighten as they mature over several years. Belugas are sometimes called the canaries of the sea because of the incredible variety of sounds they produce, including clicks, whistles, chirps, and squeals. These vocalizations are used for communication, navigation, and hunting in the often murky and dark waters beneath the ice. Belugas are also unique among whales for their flexible necks, which allow them to turn their heads from side to side, a rare trait in cetaceans. This flexibility aids in navigating through tight spaces between ice floes and searching for prey along the sea floor. Belugas are social animals, often traveling in pods that can number from a few individuals to several hundred during migration. They are highly adaptable, feeding on a diverse diet that includes fish, squid, octopus, crustaceans, and worms. In summer, many beluga populations migrate to shallow coastal estuaries, where the warmer water may help them molt their old skin. They rub against gravel and rocks on the seafloor, shedding layers of yellowed skin and revealing the bright white beneath. These estuaries also serve as important calving grounds, where mothers give birth and nurse their young in relatively protected waters. Bowhead whales can break through ice nearly 2 feet thick. These massive baleen whales, which can weigh over 100 tons and reach lengths of 60 feet, have enormous, powerful heads that make up nearly 1/3 of their body length. This immense skull, reinforced with thick bone, allows bowhead whales to smash through ice from below, creating breathing holes when open water is not available. Bowheads are among the longest-lived mammals on Earth, with some individuals estimated to be over 200 years old. Scientists have found antique harpoon points embedded in the blubber of harvested whales, relics from 19th century whaling expeditions that the whales survived and carried for well over a century. Bowheads have the longest baleen of any whale, with plates that can grow up to 13 feet long. These baleen plates act as a filter feeding system, allowing the whale to gulp enormous quantities of water and then push it out through the baleen, trapping tiny crustaceans like krill and copepods inside. A single bowhead can consume up to 2 tons of these small organisms each day. Bowhead whales spend their entire lives in Arctic and subarctic waters, migrating between feeding and breeding grounds, but never venturing far from the ice. They have thick blubber, up to 20 inches in some places, which insulates them from the frigid water and stores energy during times when food is less abundant. Their songs, deep and resonant, travel through the water for miles, a language of the ice that scientists are only beginning to understand. The Greenland shark is one of the longest-living vertebrates on Earth. These slow-moving, deep-dwelling sharks can live for over 400 years, with some estimates suggesting individuals may reach 500 years or more. This extraordinary lifespan means that some Greenland sharks alive today may have been born before the Industrial Revolution, drifting through the cold, dark waters of the Arctic for centuries. Greenland sharks grow very slowly, reaching sexual maturity only after about 150 years. They can grow to lengths of over 20 feet, though most are smaller, and they have a sluggish metabolism adapted to the freezing temperatures of their environment. These sharks are found at depths ranging from shallow coastal waters to over 7,000 feet, often in areas where light barely penetrates. They feed on a wide variety of prey, including fish, seals, and even carrion such as dead whales that sink to the ocean floor. Despite their size, Greenland sharks are poor swimmers compared to other shark species, moving through the water at a leisurely pace. Interestingly, many Greenland sharks are partially or completely blind, not due to age, but because of parasites. A small crustacean called Omatocoita elongata often attaches itself to the shark's eyes, dangling from the cornea and causing damage over time. Yet the sharks seem to manage well without clear vision, relying instead on their keen sense of smell and the ability to detect vibrations in the water to locate prey. Permafrost underlies much of the Arctic land. This permanently frozen ground, defined as soil that remains at or below 0 degrees Celsius for at least 2 consecutive years, can extend to depths of over 1,500 meters in some regions. Permafrost is not just frozen dirt. It is a complex mixture of soil, gravel, sand, and organic material, all bound together by ice. In many areas, permafrost contains the remains of plants and animals that lived thousands or even millions of years ago, preserved in a state of suspended decay. The top layer of permafrost, called the active layer, thaws during the summer and refreezes in winter. This layer, which can range from a few centimeters to several meters thick, depending on the climate, is where most Arctic plant life takes root. Beneath the active layer lies the permafrost itself, ancient and undisturbed. As global temperatures rise, permafrost is beginning to thaw in many regions. This thawing releases carbon dioxide and methane, potent greenhouse gases that have been locked in the frozen ground for millennia. The release of these gases accelerates global warming, creating a feedback loop that further warms the planet. Thawing permafrost also destabilizes the ground, causing roads to buckle, buildings to tilt, and entire hillsides to collapse in landslides. For the people who live on permafrost, these changes pose significant challenges, requiring adaptation and innovation to maintain infrastructure and communities. The tundra is a vast, treeless landscape that stretches across the Arctic. The word tundra comes from the Finnish word tunturia, meaning treeless plain, and it describes one of the most extreme environments on Earth. Arctic tundra is characterized by low temperatures, short growing seasons, and a layer of permafrost beneath the surface that prevents deep-rooted plants from taking hold. Despite these harsh conditions, the tundra is far from lifeless. In summer, when temperatures rise and the active layer of soil thaws, the tundra bursts into bloom. Hardy plants such as mosses, lichens, grasses, and low shrubs carpet the ground in shades of green, yellow, and red. Wildflowers, including Arctic poppies, saxifrages, and purple mountain avens, add splashes of color to the landscape. These plants are specially adapted to survive with minimal water, extreme cold, and constant wind. Many have shallow root systems that spread horizontally rather than deep into the ground, and some have thick, waxy leaves that reduce water loss. The tundra also supports a surprising diversity of animal life. Caribou, also known as reindeer, migrate across the tundra in vast herds, grazing on grasses, lichens, and shrubs. Arctic hares, lemmings, and ground squirrels burrow into the soil, while snowy owls, Arctic terns, and ptarmigans patrol the skies and ground. In the brief summer months, millions of migratory birds arrive in the tundra to breed, drawn by the abundance of food and the long daylight hours. The tundra is a place of quiet resilience, a landscape that seems barren at first glance, but reveals intricate webs of life upon closer inspection. Caribou migrate farther than any other land mammal. Some herds travel over 3,000 miles each year, one of the longest migrations on Earth. These journeys are driven by the search for food and the need to reach calving grounds where conditions are favorable for raising young. In spring, caribou move northward toward the Arctic tundra, where the melting snow reveals fresh vegetation. Pregnant females lead the way, arriving at the calving grounds just in time to give birth. Within hours of being born, caribou calves can stand and walk, a critical survival trait in an environment where predators such as wolves and bears are never far away. The vast herds, sometimes numbering in the hundreds of thousands, spread across the tundra, grazing on grasses, sedges, and lichens. In autumn, as temperatures drop and food becomes scarce, the herds begin their return journey southward to the boreal forests, where they spend the winter sheltered among the trees. Caribou are uniquely adapted to their environment. Their wide, concave hooves act like snowshoes, distributing their weight and allowing them to walk on soft snow without sinking. In summer, the edges of their hooves harden, providing traction on rocky ground and helping them dig through soil to reach buried plants. Caribou fur is incredibly insulating, with each hair hollow and filled with air, trapping heat close to the body. This adaptation allows them to survive temperatures that can plummet to -50 degrees Fahrenheit or lower. The muskox is a living relic of the Ice Age. These shaggy, powerful animals have changed little over the past several 100,000 years, their appearance and behavior echoing a time when mammoths and saber-toothed cats roamed the earth. Musk oxen are stocky and heavily built, with males weighing up to 900 pounds. They are covered in a thick coat of fur called kiviut, one of the warmest natural fibers in the world. Kiviut is finer than cashmere and 8 times warmer than sheep's wool, providing exceptional insulation against Arctic cold. Beneath this long outer coat is a dense undercoat that sheds in summer, leaving the animals looking ragged and unkempt as clumps of fur hang from their bodies. Musk oxen have large, curved horns that meet in the center of their foreheads, forming a thick, bony shield. During the mating season, males use these horns to battle for dominance, charging at each other head-on in displays of strength and endurance. When threatened by predators, musk oxen form a defensive circle, adults facing outward with their horns lowered while calves huddle in the center. This strategy is effective against wolves, their primary predators, but proved disastrous when humans arrived with rifles. Overhunting nearly drove musk oxen to extinction in many parts of the Arctic, but conservation efforts have helped populations recover. Today, musk oxen can be found across the Arctic, from northern Canada and Greenland to Alaska and parts of Scandinavia. They graze on grasses, willows, and other tundra plants, using their hooves to dig through snow to reach buried vegetation in winter. Arctic hares are built for survival in extreme cold. Unlike their southern relatives, Arctic hares are large, weighing up to 12 pounds and measuring over 2 feet in length. Their most striking feature is their seasonal camouflage. In winter, their fur turns snow white, blending perfectly with the frozen landscape. In summer, the fur molts to a grayish-brown in most regions, though some populations in the far north remain white year-round. Arctic hares have short ears and limbs, adaptations that reduce surface area and minimize heat loss. They also have a thick layer of fat and dense fur that covers even the soles of their feet, providing insulation against the frozen ground. Despite their size, Arctic hares are remarkably fast, capable of hopping at speeds of up to 40 miles per hour. They can also stand upright on their hind legs, using their height to survey the landscape for predators such as Arctic foxes, wolves, and snowy owls. Arctic hares are social animals, sometimes gathering in groups of several dozen or even hundreds, especially in winter. These aggregations may help with warmth and safety, as many eyes are better at detecting threats. Arctic hares feed primarily on woody plants, mosses, and lichens, and they have been observed eating meat on rare occasions, scavenging from carcasses when plant food is scarce. In spring and summer, they dig burrows in the ground, shelter, but in winter, they rely on natural features like rock crevices and snowdrifts for protection from the wind. Lemmings are small rodents with an outsized ecological impact. These mouse-sized creatures, weighing only a few ounces, are found throughout the Arctic tundra. Lemmings are famous for their dramatic population cycles, which can swing wildly from near scarcity to enormous abundance over the course of just a few years. During peak population years, the tundra can seem to teem with lemmings, their high-pitched calls echoing across the landscape. These population booms have a cascading effect on the entire Arctic ecosystem. Predators such as Arctic foxes, snowy owls, and ermines rely heavily on lemmings as a food source, and their own populations rise and fall in sync with lemming numbers. In years when lemmings are abundant, predators reproduce more successfully, producing larger litters. When lemming populations crash, predators must turn to alternative prey or migrate elsewhere, and their numbers decline. Lemmings do not, contrary to popular myth, commit mass suicide by jumping off cliffs. This misconception likely arose from a combination of misunderstood migration behavior and misleading media portrayals. In reality, lemmings are solitary and territorial for most of the year, though they may be forced to disperse widely when populations are high and food becomes scarce. Lemmings are active year-round, even during the Arctic winter. They burrow through the snow, creating intricate tunnel systems where they feed on grasses, mosses, and roots. These tunnels provide protection from predators and insulation from the cold, allowing lemmings to remain active and even reproduce during the darkest months of the year. Snowy owls are among the largest and most striking birds of the Arctic. Males are almost entirely white, a ghostly presence against the snow, while females and juveniles have dark barring on their feathers. With a wingspan of up to 5 feet and weighing up to 6 pounds, snowy owls are powerful hunters, capable of taking down prey as large as Arctic hares and even small caribou calves, though lemmings make up the bulk of their diet. Unlike most owls, snowy owls are diurnal, hunting during the day, which is a necessity in the Arctic, where summer brings constant daylight and winter brings constant darkness. Their large, forward-facing yellow eyes provide exceptional vision, and their hearing is acute enough to detect prey moving beneath the snow. Snowy owls are patient hunters, often perching on a high point like a rock or a mound of snow, and scanning the landscape for movement. When they spot prey, they swoop down in near silence, their soft feathered wings muffling the sound of their approach. Snowy owls are nomadic, their movements driven by the availability of food. In years when lemming populations are high, snowy owls breed successfully, sometimes raising large clutches of up to 11 chicks. In lean years, they may not breed at all, instead wandering widely in search of food. Some snowy owls migrate south in winter, appearing in temperate regions far from their Arctic home, much to the delight of birdwatchers. The Arctic tern holds the record for the longest migration of any animal. Each year, these graceful seabirds travel from the Arctic to the Antarctic and back again, a round-trip journey of approximately 50,000 miles. This astonishing migration means that Arctic terns experience more daylight than any other creature on Earth, basking in the continuous summer sun of both polar regions. Arctic terns are small birds, weighing only about 4 ounces, with a wingspan of around 30 inches. They have sleek bodies, forked tails, and a distinctive black cap on their heads. During their migration, Arctic terns follow a zigzagging route, taking advantage of prevailing winds and stopping to feed along the way. They are skilled flyers, capable of hovering in place and diving into the water to catch small fish and crustaceans. Arctic terns breed in the Arctic during the brief summer, nesting on beaches, tundra, and rocky shores. They are fiercely protective of their nests, diving at intruders and pecking them on the head with sharp beaks. After raising their chicks, the terns begin their long journey south, arriving in Antarctica just as the southern summer begins. There, they feed in the rich waters around the ice edge before making the return trip north. Over their lifetime, which can span 30 years or more, Arctic terns travel distances equivalent to flying to the moon and back several times. The aurora borealis, also known as the Northern Lights, is one of the most mesmerizing natural phenomena on Earth. These shimmering curtains of light dance across the Arctic sky in shades of green, pink, purple, red, and white, created when charged particles from the sun collide with gases in Earth's atmosphere. The sun constantly emits a stream of particles called the solar wind, which travels through space at speeds of up to 1,000,000 miles per hour. When these particles reach Earth, they are drawn toward the poles by the planet's magnetic field. As the particles collide with oxygen and nitrogen molecules in the upper atmosphere, they release energy in the form of light. Oxygen produces green and red hues, while nitrogen creates purples and blues. The intensity and color of the aurora depend on the altitude at which the collisions occur and the type of gas involved. The aurora borealis is most commonly seen in a band around the magnetic North Pole, including regions of northern Canada, Alaska, Scandinavia, Russia, and Greenland. The lights are most visible during the long, dark nights of autumn, winter, and early spring, when the sky is clear and the sun is below the horizon. Displays can last from a few minutes to several hours, shifting and changing shape as the solar wind fluctuates. Some auroras appear as faint glows on the horizon, while others fill the entire sky with pulsating waves of color. Witnessing the northern lights is often described as a spiritual experience, a reminder of the dynamic forces that connect the Earth to the sun and the cosmos beyond. Sea ice forms in distinct stages, each with its own characteristics. The process begins when the surface of the ocean cools to approximately -1.8 degrees Celsius, the freezing point of seawater. At this temperature, tiny ice crystals called frazzle begin to form, floating in the water and giving it a slushy, almost oily appearance. This stage is known as grease ice. As the frazzle crystals accumulate, they coalesce into small, flat disks called pancake ice, which bump and jostle against each other in the waves. Over time, the pancakes freeze together, forming a solid sheet of ice known as first-year ice. This ice can grow throughout the winter, thickening from below as more water freezes onto the underside. First-year ice typically reaches a thickness of about 1 to 2 meters. If the ice survives the summer melt, it becomes multi-year ice, which can be 3 to 5 meters thick or more. Multi-year ice is harder and smoother than first-year ice, with a bluish tint caused by the compression of air bubbles over time. The formation of sea ice is influenced by wind, currents, and temperature fluctuations. In some areas, the ice remains attached to land, forming fast ice, while in others it drifts freely as pack ice, moving with the ocean currents. Pressure from wind and waves can cause ice floes to collide, creating ridges that pile up to heights of over 60 feet. These ridges are jagged and chaotic, a frozen landscape of peaks and valleys sculpted by the relentless forces of the Arctic Ocean. Polynyas are areas of open water surrounded by sea ice. These persistent gaps in the ice are created by a combination of ocean currents, winds, and upwelling of warmer water from below. Polynyas can range in size from a few meters across to thousands of square kilometers, and they play a critical role in the Arctic ecosystem. Because they remain ice-free even in the depths of winter, polynyas provide access to the ocean for marine mammals such as seals, whales, and walruses, which rely on open water to breathe and hunt. Seabirds also congregate around polynyas, diving for fish and other prey. Polynyas are also important for the ocean's circulation. When ice forms around the edges of a polynya, it releases salt into the surrounding water, making it denser and causing it to sink. This process, known as brine rejection, drives ocean currents and helps to distribute heat and nutrients throughout the global ocean. Some polynyas occur in the same location year after year, while others are more transient, appearing and disappearing in response to changing conditions. Scientists study polynyas closely as they provide a window into the dynamics of sea ice formation and the interactions between the ocean, atmosphere, and ice. Icebergs are floating mountains of freshwater ice. Unlike sea ice, which forms from frozen seawater, icebergs originate on land. They are chunks of glacial ice that have broken off from ice sheets or glaciers and fallen into the ocean, a process known as calving. The Greenland ice sheet and the glaciers of Canada's Arctic islands produce the vast majority of icebergs in the Northern Hemisphere. These icebergs can be enormous, with some the size of small countries. Because ice is less dense than water, icebergs float, but only about 10% of their mass is visible above the surface. The remaining 90% is submerged, hidden beneath the waves. This has made icebergs a significant hazard for ships throughout history, most famously in the sinking of the Titanic in 1912. Icebergs drift with ocean currents, traveling thousands of miles from their origin before eventually melting in warmer waters. As they melt, they release fresh water into the ocean, which can influence local salinity and ocean circulation. Icebergs also carry sediment and nutrients that were trapped in the glacial ice, fertilizing the surrounding waters and supporting blooms of phytoplankton. The color of an iceberg can reveal its age and composition. Young icebergs are often white, filled with tiny air bubbles that scatter light. Older icebergs, compressed over millennia, appear a deep, translucent blue, the result of ice so dense that it absorbs all colors of light except blue. The Arctic is home to over 4 million people. Indigenous peoples, including the Inuit, Yupik, Sami, and many others, have lived in the Arctic for thousands of years, developing cultures and traditions uniquely adapted to the region's extreme environment. Today, they make up a significant portion of the Arctic population, particularly in Greenland, northern Canada, and parts of Alaska. These communities have a deep connection to the land, sea, and ice, relying on subsistence hunting, fishing, and gathering for their livelihoods. The Inuit, for example, have developed sophisticated knowledge of ice conditions animal behavior, and seasonal changes. Knowledge that has been passed down through generations and is essential for survival in the Arctic. In addition to indigenous peoples, the Arctic is home to communities of miners, oil workers, fishermen, and researchers, drawn by the region's vast natural resources and scientific interest. Towns and cities such as Tromsø in Norway, Nuuk in Greenland, and Barrow, now known as Utqiagvik in Alaska, serve as hubs of Arctic life, blending modern infrastructure with traditional ways of living. Life in the Arctic presents unique challenges. The extreme cold, long periods of darkness in winter and light in summer, and isolation from larger population centers require adaptability and resilience. Yet those who live in the Arctic often speak of the profound beauty and sense of community that define life in the far north. The Inuit have lived in the Arctic thousands of years. The ancestors of the modern Inuit, part of the Thule culture, migrated from Alaska across the Canadian Arctic and into Greenland around 1,000 years ago. They brought with them advanced technologies for hunting and survival, including the kayak, a lightweight boat made from seal skin stretched over a wooden or bone frame, and the umiak, a larger boat used for transporting families and goods. The Inuit also developed the toggling harpoon, a specialized hunting tool designed to remain lodged in prey such as seals and whales. These innovations allowed the Inuit to thrive in one of the harshest environments on Earth. Traditional Inuit life revolved around hunting and gathering. In summer, families lived in tents made from animal hides and traveled to coastal areas to hunt seals, fish for Arctic char, and gather birds' eggs. In winter, many Inuit communities built igloos, dome-shaped structures made from blocks of compacted snow. The igloo's design was ingenious, with a low entrance tunnel that acted as a cold trap, preventing frigid air from entering the living space. Inside, a platform made of snow and covered with furs served as a bed, elevated above the cold floor. A kudlik, a lamp fueled by seal or whale oil, provided heat and light, carefully tended by the women of the household. The Inuit diet was almost entirely carnivorous, consisting of seal, walrus, whale, caribou, fish, and birds. They ate much of their food raw or lightly cooked, which provided essential vitamins and nutrients that would have been destroyed by thorough cooking. This diet, rich in fat and protein, sustained the Inuit through long winters when food was scarce and the energy demands of staying warm were high. Inuit knowledge of the Arctic environment is profound and detailed. Traditional ecological knowledge, passed down orally through generations, encompasses an intricate understanding of ice conditions, weather patterns, animal behavior, and seasonal changes. Inuit hunters can read the texture and color of sea ice to determine whether it is safe to travel on, recognizing subtle signs that indicate weak spots or areas of recent movement. They can predict weather by observing cloud formations, wind direction, and the behavior of animals. This knowledge is not static. It evolves with each generation, adapting to new conditions while preserving the wisdom of the past. In recent decades, Inuit knowledge has gained recognition from scientists and policymakers as a valuable source of information about climate change and its impacts on the Arctic. Inuit communities have observed dramatic changes in their environment, from thinning sea ice to shifting animal migration patterns, and their insights are helping to shape our understanding of how the Arctic is changing. The igloo is one of the most iconic symbols of the Arctic, yet it represents only one of many types of traditional Inuit dwellings. Igloos, or snow houses, were primarily temporary shelters built during winter hunting trips. Constructing an igloo required skill and experience. Blocks of compacted snow were cut from a single drift using a snow knife, then arranged in a spiral pattern to form a dome. The blocks were carefully angled inward so that each layer supported the next, creating a structure that was surprisingly strong and well insulated. Once complete, the interior walls were glazed with a thin layer of water, which froze to form an airtight seal. Body heat from the occupants and the kudlik lamp warmed the interior, sometimes raising the temperature to just above freezing, even when outside temperatures were far below zero. For more permanent dwellings, many Inuit groups built karmate, semi-subterranean houses made from stone, driftwood, whale bones, and sod. These structures were insulated with thick walls and partially buried in the ground, providing excellent protection from the wind and cold. In summer, tents made from caribou or sealskin offered lightweight portable shelter that could be easily moved as families followed game and fish. Today, most Inuit live in modern homes with electricity, heating, and running water. But traditional knowledge of building and survival techniques remains an important part of cultural identity. The Sami people are the indigenous inhabitants of northern Scandinavia and parts of Russia. Often referred to as the people of the sun and wind, the Sami have lived in the Arctic and subarctic regions of Norway, Sweden, Finland, and the Kola Peninsula of Russia for thousands of years. Traditionally, the Sami were semi-nomadic, following herds of reindeer across the tundra and through the boreal forests. Reindeer were central to Sami life, providing meat, hides for clothing and shelter, antlers and bones for tools and transportation. The Sami developed a deep, symbiotic relationship with reindeer, guiding their movements, protecting them from predators, and relying on them for survival. Sami culture is rich in music, storytelling, and craftsmanship. Joik, a traditional form of song, is one of the oldest musical traditions in Europe. Unlike typical songs that tell a story or follow a melody, joik is a way of evoking a person, place, or animal through sound, creating an emotional and spiritual connection. Sami artisans are known for their intricate work with leather, bone, antler, and silver, creating tools, jewelry, and decorative items adorned with traditional patterns and symbols. Today, the Sami continue to practice reindeer herding, though modern challenges such as industrial development, climate change, and loss of grazing land have made it increasingly difficult. Despite these pressures, the Sami have maintained a strong cultural identity and continue to advocate for their rights and the preservation of their traditional way of life. Dog sledding has been an essential mode of transportation in the Arctic for thousands of years. Before snowmobiles, dog sleds were the primary means of traveling across the frozen landscape, used for hunting, trade, and communication between communities. Sled dogs, such as the Siberian Husky, Alaskan Malamute, and Greenland dog, are powerful, resilient animals bred for endurance and strength. A team of sled dogs can travel over 100 miles in a single day, pulling heavy loads across ice, snow, and rough terrain. The relationship between musher and dogs is one of trust and mutual respect. A good musher knows each dog's personality, strengths, and quirks, and the dogs, in turn, respond to the musher's commands and cues. Commands are often given in a mix of traditional words and unique calls, passed down through generations. Dog sledding is not just a practical skill, but also a cultural tradition and a competitive sport. Races such as the Iditarod in Alaska and the Yukon Quest draw participants from around the world, testing the endurance of both mushers and dogs over distances of over 1,000 miles. For many Arctic communities, dog sledding remains a vital link to the past, a celebration of resilience and a connection to the land. The Arctic is one of the most resource-rich regions on Earth. Beneath its ice and tundra lie vast deposits of oil, natural gas, minerals, and rare earth elements. It is estimated that the Arctic holds about 13% of the world's undiscovered oil and 30% of its undiscovered natural gas. These resources have drawn significant interest from governments and corporations, leading to increased exploration and development in the region. The extraction of these resources presents both opportunities and challenges. For some Arctic communities, resource development brings jobs, infrastructure, and economic growth. For others, it poses risks to the environment, traditional ways of life, and the fragile ecosystems that depend on the Arctic's unique conditions. Oil spills, habitat destruction, and pollution are significant concerns, and the warming climate is making these risks more pronounced as ice retreats and new areas become accessible. The Arctic is also rich in fisheries, with cold waters supporting populations of cod, halibut, shrimp, and other commercially valuable species. Climate change is altering fish distributions, with some species moving northward into newly warmed waters. This shift is creating new opportunities for fishing, but it also raises questions about sustainable management and the protection of vulnerable ecosystems. The Northwest Passage is a sea route through the Arctic Ocean connecting the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. For centuries, explorers sought this passage, hoping to find a shortcut between Europe and Asia. The route, however, was largely impassable due to thick year-round sea ice. Expeditions to find and navigate the Northwest Passage were fraught with danger, with many ships becoming trapped in the ice and their crews perishing from cold, starvation, and scurvy. The most famous of these ill-fated voyages was the Franklin expedition of 1845, led by Sir John Franklin. The expedition's two ships, HMS Erebus and HMS Terror, became icebound, and all 129 crew members eventually died. The wrecks of the ships were not discovered until 2014 and 2016, resting on the seafloor as haunting reminders of the perils of Arctic exploration. In recent years, melting sea ice has made the Northwest Passage more navigable during the summer months. In 2016, the Crystal Serenity, a large cruise ship, successfully traversed the passage, marking a new era of Arctic navigation. While this increased accessibility offers economic opportunities, it also raises concerns about environmental impact, sovereignty, and the safety of maritime traffic in a region that remains remote and unpredictable. The Arctic plays a critical role in regulating Earth's climate. The region acts as a giant refrigerator, helping to cool the planet by reflecting sunlight back into space and influencing global weather patterns. The interactions between the Arctic and the rest of the world are complex and interconnected, involving the ocean, atmosphere, ice, and land. The Arctic Ocean, for example, is a key component of the global ocean circulation system. Cold, dense water sinks in the Arctic and flows southward along the ocean floor, driving the thermohaline circulation, a slow-moving current that transports heat and nutrients around the globe. This circulation affects climate and weather far beyond the polar regions, influencing everything from monsoons in Asia to rainfall in Europe. Changes in the Arctic can have cascading effects worldwide. The loss of sea ice, for instance, alters the jet stream, a fast-flowing ribbon of air that circles the planet at high altitudes. As the Arctic warms and the temperature difference between the poles and the equator decreases, the jet stream can become more wavy and unstable, bringing unusual weather patterns to temperate regions. Scientists are working to better understand these connections, using models and observations to predict how changes in the Arctic will shape the future of the global climate. And now, as the night deepens and the Arctic's mysteries unfold, let your thoughts drift like snowflakes settling on still water. We have wandered through frozen seas and tundra plains, met creatures of extraordinary resilience, and glimpsed the lives of people who have made the impossible possible. There is more to discover, more to learn. So, let us continue, deeper into the quiet wonders of the North. The Malloy Deep is the deepest point in the Arctic Ocean. Located in the Fram Strait between Greenland and Svalbard, this underwater depression plunges to a depth of approximately 5,550 meters, over 18,000 feet below the surface. The Malloy Deep was discovered in September 1972 by the research vessel USNS Hayes, a catamaran-hulled oceanographic ship designed to explore the ocean floor. For decades, the Malloy Deep remained largely unexplored, its depths too great and its location too remote for most submersibles. Only one person has ever reached the bottom. In August 2019, explorer Victor Vescovo descended into the Malloy Deep in a specially designed submersible called the Limiting Factor. The journey took hours, a slow descent through complete darkness as the pressure increased to crushing levels. At the bottom, the Vescovo found a flat, barren seascape, a silent world of fine sediment, undisturbed for millennia. The Malloy Deep is part of a complex system of underwater ridges and fracture zones that mark the boundary between tectonic plates. Here, the seafloor is slowly spreading apart, creating new ocean crust in a process that has been ongoing for millions of years. Despite its depth and isolation, the Malloy Deep is not lifeless. Scientists have found evidence of bacteria, worms, and other organisms adapted to survive in the extreme conditions of near-freezing temperatures, complete darkness, and pressures over 1,000 times greater than at the surface. The Arctic Ocean floor is crisscrossed by underwater mountain ranges. The most prominent of these is the Gackel Ridge, a mid-ocean ridge that stretches across the entire Eurasian basin from Greenland to Siberia. The Gackel Ridge is the slowest spreading mid-ocean ridge on Earth, with the tectonic plates moving apart at a rate of less than 1 centimeter per year. This slow spreading creates a rugged, fractured landscape of volcanic peaks, deep valleys, and hydrothermal vents that spew superheated water into the icy ocean. These vents, discovered along the Gackel Ridge in the early 2000s, support unique ecosystems based not on sunlight, but on chemosynthesis, a process in which bacteria convert chemicals from the Earth's interior into energy. Around these vents, clusters of shrimp, worms, and other creatures thrive in conditions that would be lethal to most life on Earth. The discovery of life at Arctic hydrothermal vents challenged the assumption that such ecosystems could only exist in warmer waters. It revealed that life can find a foothold even in the most extreme and unlikely places. Arctic sea ice forms in distinct stages, each with its own name and characteristics. The process begins with frazzle ice, tiny needle-like crystals that form when the ocean surface cools below freezing. These crystals accumulate into a slushy layer called grease ice, which gives the water an oily, matte appearance. As the ice continues to freeze, it coalesces into small, rounded discs known as pancake ice. These pancakes, typically a few centimeters to a few meters across, bump and jostle against each other in the waves, their edges curling upward from repeated collisions. Over time, the pancakes freeze together to form larger sheets of ice. In calm conditions, ice can form as a smooth, continuous layer called nylars, a thin, dark ice that bends with the waves. As winter progresses, the ice thickens and strengthens. First-year ice, which forms and melts within a single season, typically reaches a thickness of 1 to 2 meters. If it survives the summer, it becomes multi-year ice, harder, thicker, and more resilient. Multi-year ice can grow to 3 to 5 meters thick or more, and it takes on a bluish hue as air bubbles are compressed out over time. The surface of multi-year ice is smoother than first-year ice, worn down by years of melting and refreezing. Leads are cracks in the sea ice that create narrow channels of open water. These linear features form when the ice is pulled apart by ocean currents, winds, or tides, creating openings that can range from a few meters to over a kilometer wide. Leads can extend for hundreds of kilometers, cutting through the ice like rivers through a frozen landscape. They are dynamic features, constantly opening and closing as the ice shifts and moves. For Arctic wildlife, leads are lifelines. Seals use them as breathing holes, surfacing in the open water to gulp air before diving back beneath the ice. Polar bears patrol the edges of leads, waiting for seals to appear. Whales navigate through leads, following the channels to reach feeding grounds or escape from areas where the ice is too thick. For humans, leads present both opportunities and hazards. Early explorers used leads to navigate through the ice, but they also posed dangers, as a lead could open suddenly beneath a sled or close just as quickly, trapping a ship. Even today, scientists working on the ice must constantly monitor leads to ensure their safety. Pressure ridges form when sea ice collides and buckles under the force of wind and currents. These ridges can tower over 20 meters above the ice surface, with keels extending even deeper below. The formation of a pressure ridge is a violent process, with enormous sheets of ice grinding against each other and crumpling upward in a chaotic jumble of blocks and slabs. The resulting structure is jagged and unstable, difficult to traverse on foot or by sled. Pressure ridges are among the most dramatic features of the Arctic icescape, creating a landscape of peaks and valleys that can stretch for kilometers. Beneath the surface, the keels of pressure ridges extend deep into the water, sometimes reaching depths of over 50 meters. These underwater structures can scrape the ocean floor in shallow areas, churning up sediment and affecting the ecosystems below. For submarines navigating beneath the ice, pressure ridges are hazards to be avoided. They're jagged keels capable of damaging hulls or propellers. Polynyas are mysterious openings in the sea ice. Unlike leads, which are temporary and shift with the movement of the ice, polynyas are areas of persistent open water that appear in the same locations year after year. They are created by a combination of factors, including upwelling of warmer water from the depths, strong winds that push the ice away, and ocean currents that prevent ice from forming. Some polynyas are enormous, covering thousands of square kilometers. The North Water Polynya, located between Greenland and Canada, is one of the largest and most biologically productive areas in the Arctic. Despite being surrounded by ice for much of the year, the Polynya remains ice-free or only lightly covered, creating an oasis for wildlife. Seabirds gather in vast flocks, diving for fish and krill. Narwhals, belugas, and bowhead whales congregate in the open water, feeding and socializing. Polar bears hunt along the edges, and walruses haul out on nearby ice floes. For indigenous communities, polynyas have long been important hunting grounds, offering access to marine mammals and fish even in the dead of winter. Icebergs in the Arctic are born from glaciers. When a glacier reaches the ocean, the ice at its front edge floats on the water, creating a floating tongue or shelf. Over time, the stress of tides, waves, and melting weakens the ice until a chunk breaks off and falls into the sea with a thunderous crash. This process, known as calving, can produce icebergs of staggering size. The largest icebergs from Greenland can be several kilometers long and hundreds of meters tall, true mountains of ice drifting through the ocean. Icebergs float because ice is less dense than water. but the vast majority of their mass is hidden beneath the surface. An iceberg that appears small from a ship may extend deep into the water, presenting a hidden danger to vessels. The shape of an iceberg changes as it melts and drifts, sculpted by waves, wind, and the sun. Some icebergs develop arches, caves, and pinnacles, their surfaces etched with delicate patterns of blue and white. The color of an iceberg reveals its age and history. White icebergs are filled with air bubbles that scatter light, while older, denser icebergs appear a deep, translucent blue, the result of ice so compressed that it absorbs all colors except blue. The Greenland ice sheet is the second largest body of ice on Earth. Covering over 1.7 million square kilometers, it stretches across most of Greenland, a vast frozen plateau that rises over 3 kilometers above sea level in some places. The ice sheet is formed from snow that has accumulated and compressed over hundreds of thousands of years. In its deepest parts, the ice is over 3 kilometers thick, a towering mass that exerts immense pressure on the bedrock below. The weight of the ice is so great that it has actually depressed the land, pushing parts of Greenland's bedrock below sea level. The Greenland ice sheet is not static. It flows slowly toward the edges, driven by its own weight and the pull of gravity. As it reaches the coast, the ice spills into the ocean through massive outlet glaciers, some of which move at rates of tens of meters per day. These glaciers are among the fastest flowing ice streams on Earth, carving deep fjords as they melt, push toward the sea. When the ice reaches the water, it carves enormous icebergs that drift south into the North Atlantic. The Greenland ice sheet is losing mass at an accelerating rate. As temperatures rise, more ice melts in summer than accumulates in winter, and the balance that has sustained the ice sheet for millennia is tipping. Scientists estimate that if the entire Greenland ice sheet were to melt, global sea levels would rise by over 7 meters, inundating coastal cities and reshaping coastlines around the world. Glaciers are rivers of ice that flow slowly downhill under their own weight. In the Arctic, glaciers form in high mountains and on ice caps, where snow accumulates faster than it melts. Over time, the weight of the snow compresses it into ice, and the ice begins to flow, creeping downslope at rates ranging from a few centimeters to several meters per day. As a glacier moves, it grinds against the bedrock beneath it, carving deep valleys and smoothing the landscape. The ice picks up rocks and sediment, which act like sandpaper, polishing the surface and leaving behind striations, long scratches that record the glacier's passage. At the front edge of a glacier, called the terminus, the ice melts and releases the rocks and sediment it has carried, creating piles of debris called moraines. These moraines can form ridges, hills, and other landforms that persist long after the glacier has retreated. Glaciers are sensitive indicators of climate change. When the climate cools, glaciers advance, their termini pushing forward and covering more ground. When the climate warms, glaciers retreat, their ice melting faster than it is replenished by snow. In recent decades, glaciers throughout the Arctic have been retreating at alarming rates, leaving behind barren landscapes and lakes where ice once stood. Ice caps are dome-shaped masses of ice that cover less than 50,000 square kilometers. They are smaller than ice sheets, but still impressive features, blanketing mountains and highlands with thick layers of ice. The largest ice cap in the Arctic is the Ostfonna ice cap in Svalbard, which covers over 8,000 square kilometers. Ice caps flow outward from their centers, spreading like pancakes under their own weight. The ice moves slowly, creeping down slopes and filling valleys. At the edges, Ice caps often terminate in steep cliffs or flow into the ocean, where they carve icebergs. Ice caps are vulnerable to warming temperatures. Because they are smaller and thinner than ice sheets, they respond more quickly to changes in climate. In recent years, ice caps in the Arctic have been shrinking, their edges retreating, and their surfaces lowering as melt rates exceed accumulation. This loss of ice contributes to rising sea levels and alters the landscapes and ecosystems where the ice caps exist. Brinicles are underwater icicles of frozen brine. They form when extremely cold air cools the surface of sea ice, causing the salt in the ice to separate and drain downward as a dense, supercooled brine. This brine is colder than the surrounding seawater and heavier, so it sinks. As it descends, it freezes the water around it, creating a hollow tube of ice that grows downward like a stalactite in a cave. Brinicles can extend several meters below the ice, reaching all the way to the seafloor in shallow areas. When a brinicle touches the bottom, it can freeze the sediment and any slow-moving creatures in its path, creating a trail of ice across the ocean floor. Brinicles are fragile and temporary, lasting only as long as the conditions that create them persist. They are rarely seen by humans, as they form in the frigid darkness beneath the ice. The first footage of a brinicle was captured in 2011, revealing this strange and beautiful phenomenon to the world. Snow in the Arctic is not uniform. It comes in many forms, each shaped by temperature, wind, and the conditions under which it falls. Fresh snow is light and fluffy, composed of delicate crystals with intricate branching patterns. In calm conditions, these crystals can be remarkably large and complex, with six-fold symmetry and elaborate arms. As snow ages, it changes. Wind breaks the delicate crystals, rounding them into grains. Temperature fluctuations cause the snow to compact and harden, forming layers with different densities and strengths. In the Arctic, snow can remain on the ground for 8 months or more, accumulating into deep drifts that insulate the ground and provide shelter for animals. Some Arctic animals, such as lemmings and ptarmigans, burrow into the snow to escape the cold and wind, creating tunnels and chambers where temperatures are much warmer than the air above. The Inuit and other Arctic peoples have many words for different types of snow, reflecting the importance of snow in their lives. There is snow that is good for building igloos, snow that is too soft to support weight, snow that has been wind-packed into hard drifts, and snow that is melting and refreezing into icy granules. This detailed knowledge of snow is essential for travel, hunting, and survival in the Arctic. Arctic flowers bloom in a burst of color during the brief summer. Despite the harsh conditions, over 1,700 species of plants grow on the Arctic tundra, including flowering plants, dwarf shrubs, grasses, mosses, and lichens. These plants have evolved remarkable adaptations to survive in an environment where the growing season lasts only 6 to 8 weeks, and temperatures rarely rise above 10 degrees Celsius. Many Arctic plants grow close to the ground, forming low cushions or mats that shelter them from the wind. This growth habit also allows them to take advantage of the warmth radiated by the dark soil, which can be several degrees warmer than the air above. Plants in the Arctic also tend to have small, waxy leaves that reduce water loss and dark-colored foliage that absorbs more sunlight. Some plants, such as the Arctic poppy, have cup-shaped flowers that track the sun, rotating throughout the day to maximize the amount of light they capture. This not only helps the plant photosynthesize more efficiently, but also warms the interior of the flower, creating a microclimate that attracts pollinators. The flowers of Arctic plants are often brightly colored, with shades of yellow, purple, pink, and white. These colors stand out against the muted browns and greens of the tundra, serving as beacons for the insects that pollinate them. Pollination in the Arctic is a race against time. Plants must flower, attract pollinators, and set seed within the brief summer window before the cold returns. The Arctic poppy is one of the most iconic flowers of the tundra. With its bright yellow petals and cup-shaped blooms, it is a symbol of resilience and beauty in the harshest of environments. Arctic poppies grow throughout the northern regions, from Greenland and Svalbard to Alaska and northern Canada. In Svalbard, they are known as Svalbard poppies and are the national flower of the archipelago. The Arctic poppy holds the record as the northernmost plant in the world, growing at latitudes up to 83 degrees north near the northern tip of Greenland. Arctic poppies are remarkably well adapted to the cold. Their stems are covered with fine hairs that trap warm air and provide insulation. The flowers themselves act like solar dishes, concentrating sunlight and raising the temperature inside the bloom by up to 10 degrees Celsius compared to the surrounding air. This warmth attracts insects and helps the plant's reproductive organs function more efficiently. Arctic poppies can even survive being frozen while in bloom. If a sudden storm brings freezing temperatures, the flowers can endure the cold and resume their development once the weather warms. Purple saxifrage is often the first flower to bloom in the Arctic. As soon as the snow begins to melt, this hardy plant sends up tiny purple flowers, sometimes blooming through patches of lingering snow. Purple saxifrage grows in dense cushions that hug the ground, providing protection from the wind and conserving heat. The flowers are a vital early source of nectar for insects and food for animals such as Arctic hares and ground squirrels. Inuit communities have long valued purple saxifrage as a source of vitamin C, eating the sweet blossoms to prevent scurvy during the long winter months when fresh food is scarce. The plant's resilience and early blooming make it a symbol of renewal and the return of life to the tundra after the long darkness of winter. Mosses and lichens are the unsung heroes of the Arctic. These simple, hardy organisms can survive conditions that would kill most other plants. Mosses grow in dense mats on rocks, soil, and even on the surface of glaciers. They have no true roots, instead absorbing water and nutrients directly through their leaves. Mosses can photosynthesize at temperatures near freezing and can survive being completely dried out, resuming growth as soon as moisture becomes available. Lichens are even more remarkable. They are not single organisms, but symbiotic partnerships between fungi and algae or cyanobacteria. The fungus provides structure and protection, while the algae or bacteria photosynthesize and produce food. This partnership allows lichens to grow in the most extreme environments, from bare rock to the sides of cliffs. Lichens are incredibly slow growing, adding only a few millimeters per year, but they can live for thousands of years. Some lichen colonies in the Arctic are estimated to be over 4,000 years old, making them among the oldest living organisms on Earth. Lichens are also a critical food source for many Arctic animals. Caribou rely heavily on lichens during the winter, digging through the snow to reach the pale, branching growths that blanket the tundra. Arctic willows are among the few woody plants that grow on the tundra. Unlike the towering willows found in temperate regions, Arctic willows are tiny, rarely growing more than 10 to 20 centimeters tall. They are true shrubs, with woody stems and branches, but they hug the ground to avoid the wind and cold. Arctic willows are an important food source for many animals, including caribou, musk oxen, and ptarmigans. In spring, the willows produce catkins, fuzzy clusters of flowers that provide nectar for early emerging insects. Arctic willows are also one of the only plant species found at the very northernmost reaches of the Arctic, growing farther north than almost any other plant. Their ability to survive in such extreme conditions makes them a symbol of tenacity and endurance. Cotton grass is a distinctive plant of the Arctic wetlands. Despite its name, cotton grass is not a grass but a sedge, a type of plant that thrives in wet, boggy soils. In summer, cotton grass produces fluffy white seed heads that resemble tufts of cotton, giving the plant its name. These seed heads are designed to be dispersed by the wind. The light, airy seeds carried across the tundra to colonize new areas. Cotton grass is an important part of the Arctic ecosystem. Its dense root systems help stabilize the soggy soils of wetlands, preventing erosion. The plants also provide food and nesting material for birds and small mammals. In some areas, cotton grass is so abundant that entire meadows appear white when the seed heads mature, creating a striking and otherworldly landscape. The midnight sun is a phenomenon unique to the polar regions. During the height of summer, the sun does not set at all in areas north of the Arctic Circle. Instead, it traces a slow circle around the sky, dipping close to the horizon at midnight before rising again. This creates a surreal experience where the boundaries between day and night dissolve, and time seems to lose its usual rhythm. The midnight sun is caused by the tilt of the Earth's axis. As the planet orbits the sun, the North Pole tilts toward the sun during summer, allowing sunlight to reach the Arctic even at midnight. The farther north you go, the longer the period of continuous daylight. At the North Pole itself, the sun rises once in spring and does not set again for 6 months. For plants and animals, the midnight sun is both a blessing and a challenge. The constant light allows plants to photosynthesize around the clock, maximizing their growth during the short summer. Animals can hunt and forage at any hour, and many species, such as Arctic terns and caribou, remain active throughout the day and night. For humans, the midnight sun can be disorienting, disrupting sleep patterns and challenging the body's natural circadian rhythms. Yet it also brings a sense of wonder and freedom, a time when the Arctic feels alive with possibility. The polar night is the counterpart to the midnight sun. During the depths of winter, the sun does not rise above the horizon for weeks or even months. The darkness is not absolute, especially at the beginning and end of the polar night, when twilight lingers for hours each day, painting the sky in shades of deep blue and purple. But as the polar night deepens, true darkness settles in, broken only by the moon, the stars, and the occasional shimmer of the aurora borealis. The polar night is a time of stillness and introspection. For the animals that remain active, it is a period of adaptation. Polar bears hunt by the light of the moon and stars, their white fur blending into the snow. Arctic foxes scavenge and hunt, relying on their acute hearing and sense of smell to find prey beneath the snow. Many animals, however, enter a state of dormancy or reduce their activity to conserve energy. For the people who live in the Arctic, the polar night has historically been a time of storytelling, crafts, and community. Long winter evenings were spent indoors, gathered around fires or oil lamps, sharing stories, songs, and knowledge. Today, modern technology has brought electric lights and heating, but the polar night still shapes life in the Arctic, a reminder of the power of the natural world and the resilience required to thrive in such an environment. Frost flowers are delicate ice structures that form on new sea ice. When the air is much colder than the water below, moisture from the ocean surface evaporates and freezes instantly upon contact with the frigid air, creating intricate crystals that resemble flowers. These crystals can be several centimeters tall, with delicate petals and elaborate branching structures. Frost flowers are fragile and ephemeral, lasting only until the wind blows them away or the temperature changes. They form only on very young, thin ice, in conditions of extreme cold and calm. Despite their beauty, frost flowers are more than just decorative. They play a role in the chemistry of the Arctic atmosphere, concentrating salt and other compounds from the seawater. These concentrated salts can be carried into the atmosphere by the wind, influencing cloud formation and atmospheric processes. Sundogs, also known as parhelia, are bright spots of light that appear on either side of the sun. They are created when sunlight passes through ice crystals in the atmosphere, typically in high, thin clouds composed of hexagonal ice crystals. As the light refracts through the crystals, it is bent and dispersed, creating a halo around the sun with two bright spots at the edges. Sundogs are most common in the Arctic during winter, when the air is filled with ice crystals. They can be stunningly beautiful, with the bright spots glowing in shades of red, orange, and yellow. Sundogs are sometimes accompanied by a complete halo around the sun, creating a spectacular display of light and color in the frozen sky. Snow rainbows, or fog bows, are rare optical phenomena that occur when sunlight passes through tiny water droplets or ice crystals in fog or mist. Unlike traditional rainbows, which are created by larger raindrops and display vivid colors, fog bows are pale and ghostly, often appearing white or faintly tinted. They form an arc in the sky, much like a rainbow, but their ethereal appearance gives them an otherworldly quality. Fog bows are most commonly seen in the Arctic during the brief summer, when fog forms over melting ice and open water. They are a reminder of the delicate interplay of light, water, and temperature in the polar regions. Halos and pillars of light are common sights in the Arctic. Light pillars are vertical beams of light that appear to extend upward or downward from the sun, moon, or even artificial lights. They are created by the reflection of light off flat, hexagonal ice crystals that are falling slowly through the air. The crystals act like tiny mirrors, catching the light and creating the illusion of glowing columns in the sky. Halos are rings of light that encircle the sun or moon, formed when light is refracted through ice crystals in high-altitude clouds. These halos can be complete circles or partial arcs, and they are sometimes accompanied by additional optical effects such as sundogs or tangent arcs. In the Arctic, where the air is often filled with ice crystals, halos and light pillars are frequent, adding to the magic and mystery of the polar sky. The Arctic supports a surprising diversity of bird life. Over 200 species of birds breed in the Arctic, drawn by the abundance of food and the long daylight hours of summer. Many of these birds are migratory, traveling thousands of miles from temperate and tropical regions to nest and raise their young in the far north. The tundra provides a rich buffet for birds. Insects, especially mosquitoes and midges, swarm in vast clouds during the summer, providing an abundant food source for insectivorous birds. Seeds, berries, and aquatic invertebrates are also plentiful. Coastal areas and wetlands teem with fish, mollusks, and crustaceans, attracting seabirds, shorebirds. Among the most common Arctic birds are ptarmigans, chicken-like birds that remain in the Arctic year-round. In winter, ptarmigans turn entirely white, blending seamlessly with the snow. In summer, their plumage molts to a mottled brown, providing camouflage against the rocky tundra. Ptarmigans feed on buds, leaves, and berries, and they are an important prey species for Arctic foxes and birds of prey. The red-throated loon is a graceful water bird that nests throughout the Arctic. Loons are excellent swimmers and divers, using their powerful legs and streamlined bodies to pursue fish beneath the surface. Red-throated loons build their nests on small ponds and lakes, often just a simple scrape in the ground, lined with vegetation. During the breeding season, the male performs elaborate displays, calling with a haunting, wailing cry that echoes across the tundra. Red-throated loons are migratory, traveling to coastal waters in the south during winter. They navigate by the stars and by landmarks, returning to the same nesting sites year after year. The long-tailed jaeger is a pirate of the Arctic skies. This sleek, agile bird earns much of its food by harassing other birds, chasing them relentlessly until they drop or regurgitate their catch. Jaegers are fast and maneuverable flyers, capable of sudden turns and dives that allow them to snatch food from the air or the ground. During the breeding season, jaegers nest on the tundra, where they also hunt lemmings, insects, and eggs. They are fiercely territorial, diving at intruders, including humans who venture too close to their nests. The ivory gull is one of the most beautiful and enigmatic birds of the Arctic. Pure white with dark eyes and black legs, the ivory gull spends much of its life far from land, following the edges of the pack ice and scavenging on the remains of seal kills left by polar bears. Ivory gulls also feed on fish, crustaceans, and carrion, and they are skilled at finding food in the harsh, frozen environment. Ivory gulls nest on remote cliffs and rocky outcrops, building simple nests of moss and lichen. They are rarely seen by humans, and their populations are in decline, likely due to changes in sea ice and the availability of food. Peregrine falcons are among the fastest animals on Earth, capable of diving at speeds exceeding 200 miles per hour. These powerful birds of prey nest on cliffs throughout the Arctic, where they hunt other birds, including shorebirds, ducks, and even other raptors. Peregrines are masters of the sky, using their incredible speed and agility to strike prey in mid-air. During the breeding season, peregrines are fiercely protective of their nests, diving at any intruder with loud, aggressive calls. Once widespread, peregrine falcon populations declined dramatically in the mid-20th century due to pesticide use, but conservation efforts have helped them recover in many parts of the world, including the Arctic. The Arctic has a rich tradition of storytelling. For thousands of years, stories have been the way Arctic peoples pass down knowledge, history, and cultural values from one generation to the next. In the long winter darkness, when families gathered indoors, storytelling was a form of entertainment, education, and connection. Inuit stories often feature animals with human characteristics, reflecting the close relationship between people and the natural world. Raven, a trickster figure, appears in many tales, using his cleverness to outwit others and bring fire, light, or other gifts to humanity. Sedna, the goddess of the sea, controls the marine animals and must be respected and appeased to ensure successful hunting. Stories also teach practical skills and survival knowledge. They explain how to read the weather, navigate by the stars, and understand animal behavior. They warn of dangers, such as thin ice or unpredictable weather, and they celebrate the values of courage, generosity, and resilience. Today, storytelling remains an important part of Arctic culture. Elders continue to share traditional stories, and new stories are being created that reflect the changing world and the challenges faced by Arctic communities. Traditional Arctic clothing is a marvel of design and functionality. Made from animal skins and furs, these garments provide exceptional insulation and protection against the cold, wind, and wet. The Inuit parka, for example, is typically made from caribou hide, with the fur turned inward for warmth and outward for protection against the wind. The hood is lined with fur, often from a wolf or wolverine, which does not frost over from breath in the cold. Parkas are often double-layered, with an inner parka worn with the fur against the skin and an outer parka worn with the fur facing out. The air trapped between the two layers provides additional insulation. Mittens, boots, and pants are similarly designed, with careful attention to fit and construction to prevent heat loss. Sealskin is often used for boots and outer garments because it is waterproof and durable. Boots called kamiks or mukluks are insulated with grass, moss, or fur and are designed to keep feet warm and dry even in the coldest conditions. Traditional Arctic clothing is not just functional, but also beautiful. Garments are often decorated with intricate beadwork, embroidery, and patterns that reflect cultural identity and personal creativity. Throat singing is a unique vocal art practiced by Inuit women. This form of singing, known as katajak in Inuktitut, involves two women standing face to face and producing rhythmic, guttural sounds in a playful, competitive manner. The goal is to create complex patterns of sound, with each singer trying to outlast the other without laughing or losing breath. Throat singing mimics the sounds of the natural world, including the calls of animals, the wind, and the movement of water. It is both a form of entertainment and a way of preserving cultural traditions. Historically, throat singing was performed by women while the men were away hunting, providing a way to pass the time and strengthen social bonds. Today, throat singing is experiencing a revival, with young Inuit artists incorporating it into contemporary music and sharing it with audiences around the world. Drum dancing is a traditional form of performance found throughout the Arctic. The drum, typically made from a wooden frame covered with animal skin, is held in one hand and struck with a stick in the other. The dancer moves in rhythm with the drum, often telling a story through movement and song. Drum dances are performed at celebrations, gatherings, and ceremonies. They can recount hunts, journeys, or mythological tales, and they serve as a way to connect with ancestors and the spiritual world. The rhythm of the drum is said to echo the heartbeat of the earth, grounding the dancer and the audience in the present moment. The Arctic is changing faster than almost any other place on Earth. Rising temperatures are causing sea ice to shrink, glaciers to retreat, and permafrost to thaw. These changes are altering ecosystems, weather patterns, and the lives of the people and animals who depend on the Arctic environment. For polar bears, the loss of sea ice is a critical threat. Ice is their hunting platform, and as it disappears earlier in the spring and forms later in the fall, bears have less time to hunt and build up the fat reserves they need to survive. Some bears are adapting by spending more time on land, scavenging for food, or hunting caribou and birds. But these alternative food sources are not sufficient to sustain the population. For indigenous communities, climate change is disrupting traditional ways of life. Hunting and fishing patterns are shifting as animals change their migration routes and timing. Thin ice makes travel dangerous, and coastal erosion threatens homes and infrastructure. At the same time, some communities are finding new opportunities, such as longer seasons for fishing and tourism. The Arctic is also a harbinger of global change. What happens in the Arctic does not stay in the Arctic. Melting ice contributes to rising sea levels. Thawing permafrost releases greenhouse gases that accelerate warming, and changes in the Arctic climate influence weather patterns far to the south. Yet the Arctic is also a place of hope. Scientists, policymakers, and indigenous leaders are working together to understand and respond to the challenges of a changing climate. Research stations across the Arctic monitor ice, weather, and wildlife, providing data that informs climate models and conservation efforts. International agreements aim to protect the region from overfishing, pollution, and unregulated development. Indigenous knowledge is being recognized as a valuable source of insight into how ecosystems are changing and how communities can adapt. The resilience that has allowed Arctic peoples and wildlife thrive in one of the harshest environments on Earth is now being called upon to navigate an uncertain future. The Arctic is a place of paradoxes. It is vast, yet fragile, seemingly barren, yet teeming with life, frozen in time, yet constantly changing. It is a land of extremes, where the sun does not set for months and then does not rise, where temperatures can plunge to -70 degrees, yet life persists. It is a place of beauty, from the shimmering auroras that dance across the night sky to the tiny flowers that bloom in the snow. And it is a place of connection, linking the past to the present, the land to the sea, and the people who call it home to the rest of the world. As you drift towards sleep, let the Arctic settle into your mind like snow falling on still water. Think of the polar bear padding across the ice, the narwhal rising from the depths, the flowers blooming in defiance of the cold. Think of the people who have lived here for thousands of years, who have learned to thrive in a place that demands everything and gives generously to those who understand it. The Arctic is a teacher, a reminder that life finds a way, even in the most unlikely places, that beauty exists in simplicity, and that the Earth is a living, breathing system of which we are all a part. The ice will keep its secrets. The northern lights will continue their silent dance. The whales will sing beneath the frozen sea. The tundra will bloom again when summer returns. And the Arctic, eternal and patient, will endure. You have wandered far tonight, through frozen oceans and ancient ice, through lands where animals and people have woven lives from snow and stone and starlight. You have seen the impossible made real, the fragile made strong, the silent made luminous. Now it is time to rest. Let your breathing slow, like the rhythm of waves beneath the ice. Let your thoughts drift, like icebergs on a gentle current. Let the cold, clean beauty of the Arctic settle around you like a soft blanket of snow. You have done enough for today. Close your eyes, rest, and dream of other skies, of northern lights and midnight suns, of polar bears and whales, of a world at the top of the earth where wonder lives in the quiet spaces between the ice and the stars. Good night.